the lane. 15-10. Touchdown, Chargers.
What's up, guys? Welcome into a brand new episode of Chargers Weekly, presented by Microsoft Surface. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith. And now that we are in the Chargers offseason, we like to bring guests on every week. And this guy does this a week after the Senior Bowl for us. It's an annual tradition now. Rick Serritella, NFL Draft Bible. Money, we love having Rick.
We do, and be sure to check out all the great draft coverage at SI.com. We don't bring him on because it fills space. We bring him on because he's one of the best, and we appreciate the time. His time is valuable right now. You're coming off the Senior Bowl, Rick. A lot of times, quarterback dependent. You know, we know Justin Herbert certainly raised his hands there. Both of them, you know, just to let you know that he had two that worked. But this year it seemed like maybe, you know, little lacking in terms of sizzle at that particular position. But what about other positions and maybe what your takeaways were from that week and that game?
Yeah, Herbert put his hands up. Pickett put his hands down. And, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks throughout the years, though, fellas. Thanks for having me. Christian Ponder, E.J. Manuel, Daniel Jones, they made themselves a lot of money at the Senior Bowl, and so it was a little bit disappointing. I know Will Levis out of Kentucky had some injuries he was dealing with this year. It would have been nice to just see him go down there, maybe at least interview with the teams. We didn't have that this year. Not exactly the star-laden quarterback class, but guys like Jake Haener took full advantage. He won the MVP. I think, you know, after seeing what Brock Purdy has done, you got to kind of take a deep dive into these quarterbacks, and Tyson Bagent out of Shepherd had a nice showing throughout the week. But, yeah, I think, you know, the great thing about Senior Bowl is you get Power 5, you get small school, FCS. A guy like Cody March from North Dakota State is out there serving up pancakes to the P5. And a lot of risers, a lot of surprisers. Luke Musgrave comes to mind. I mean, you hear about the athleticism, you see that frame. I think George Kittle, you know, this kid's the real deal. Tight end is a really strong group this year. And there's a lot of depth in this year's class with the trickle down from COVID, every player getting that extra year of eligibility. I don't think we have the blue chip draft that everybody always likes to see, but I do think we have a tremendously deep draft.
Rick, let's dig in a little bit. The Chargers will select at 21 overall, and Money and I kind of preliminary looked at, okay, speed wide receiver would make sense. A quality tight end would make sense. Maybe an edge rusher when given Joey Bosa's injury history and Khalil Mack aging. Let's just start with the offensive side. Wide receivers and tight ends down in Mobile that impressed.
Yeah, you know, for me, this Tank Dell out of Houston, there was a lot of buzz around him. I didn't do an in-depth study until right before the Senior Bowl. I said, man, this guy has got some burst, quick get-off, explosion. I think his route running can create separation that is rare, and he might even be knocking on that back end of the first round range. I think he would be a true steal in round 2 if he's still on the board. But how about my New Jersey guy out of Princeton, Yeshavis? I mean, he made himself some money throughout the week. He showed that he belonged. You know, a lot of times you come into the Senior Bowl with that Ivy League helmet. The teams are questioning how much does he love the game? Does he really need it? This kid really won a lot of folks over, I think, both on the field, in the interview room. Ronnie Bell from Michigan, I think he was one of the fastest timed guys on the GPS tracker throughout the week, which was good because he was coming off that ACL injury. Before that injury, he was thought to be a top 100 guy. I think he lost some of that luster with that ACL injury, so it was good to kind of see him rebound and show that top flight speed. I think he's a solid mid-round pick. And then Michael Wilson out of Stanford. I mean, who wasn't departing Mobile impressed with this young man? The route running, the hands, the consistency. And again, in Mobile, those one-on-ones throughout the practice week, that separates the contenders from the pretenders. Wilson all week long was shredding defenders.
Just, Rick, expand beyond the Senior Bowl. And I think tight end's an interesting position, for the Chargers at 21 there. It's possible that the top tight end will be there. I know people will have him slotted differently, but, you mentioned Kraft at the Senior Bowl making himself some money. I was fortunate to call the SC-Utah game, so I got to see Dalton Kincaid really put his imprint on a game. Mayer seems to be a number one guy for a lot of people. You mentioned Musgrave being a Kittle kind of guy. And then you got, Washington out of Georgia. So kind of walk us through how that position looks, when you think that first guy is going to come off the board, how many first rounders? Like, let's just talk tight ends.
Yeah, let's throw Latu out of Alabama into the equation. Like I said, so many pass catchers, so many tight end threats, and to me, Michael Mayer is the best of the bunch. He actually reminds me, go back a decade, fellas, Kyle Rudolph coming out of Notre Dame. Can catch, can block. I think Mayer's a top end of the first round. I think that Musgrave, you've got to bet on the upside there with the NFL bloodlines, the physicality, the athleticism. I think his best football is ahead of him. If you told me 5 years down the road that Musgrave would be a top 5 tight end, I would not be surprised. So I think he sneaks into the first round. And I'll be honest, I mean, Musgrave, Darnell Washington out of Georgia, I have a hard time picking which guy I like more, because when you can move at 6'7", 250 pounds like Darnell Washington,
giant,
it's incredible. And it's amazing because his teammate, Brock Bowers, that kid is maybe better than Kyle Pitts. The sky's the limit for him. And Washington might be a first-round guy. And you mentioned Kincaid. There's a lot of love for him in the scouting community. Now, I'm kind of wondering what his time speed is, because I don't see a guy, like when you match him up against Musgrave and some of these other tight ends, I don't think he's going to run like Bambi. So he might get knocked there. I slapped a third-round grade on him. I know a lot of people like him in the first round. I think he splits the difference in the second round. And Latu is a good case study as well, because I believe Jaleel Billingsley was there, transferred to Texas, quit the team. Oh, by the way, we had him out at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. Then Latu steps in and lights the world on fire. So I think he's a guy in the middle rounds that could be great value.
Rick, I mentioned edge, and I look at what the Chargers currently have. Joey missed a lot of games this year. Khalil Mack coincidentally played in all of them, and he's had some injury history. So you go into 2023. Kyle Van Noy was a guy who's unsigned right now, older guy who contributed a lot. I think that the Chargers are going to have to develop some young talent on the edge, even if it's not first round. Who are some guys that you think would be a nice fit for the Bolts?
Well, sticking to the Senior Bowl, this Keon White, I mean, he looked really good down there at Georgia Tech. He really caught my attention because I saw him as a mid-round prospect. Then he goes down to Mobile, and he's winning those one-on-ones. He's showing a pass rush repertoire. Now, his game's a little bit raw, right? He's got to be developed and coached up and get with the NFL strength and conditioning program, but the upside is there, and you saw the flashes. Same thing with the kid from Iowa State, Will McDonald. I like to say he's a cyclone physically and literally. You saw the spin move he was putting on guys. He's got incredible bend and dip around the corner. He bends like what's his name with the horse and the donkey, Gumby. I mean, this guy on the he's like Gumby on the edge. So those are two guys that stood out to me in Mobile. I think a guy like Miles Murphy from Clemson might be there at 21. And he can play inside. He can play outside. He's been moved up and down that defensive line. He's right in that 270, 275 range, so he can play with his hand in the dirt. It depends on, what direction the Chargers want to go. But I agree with you. Bosa not only has been a injury liability, but, man, we gotta reel him in a little bit. That temperament, man, cost him some laundry on the field, man. It wasn't good to see. So we got to reel in Bosa there.
A little too excited. Certainly gets upset when he gets held. The going from edge to interior line, and we saw there was an issue with the Chargers, and they certainly had a number of guys step up big, particularly Braden Fehoko, practice squad guys. But we know, look, you look at the Super Bowl, right, and you see what Chris Jones, who's in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, Fletcher Cox, Hargrave, you have to be stacked at that interior line position. Just kind of knowing what defense the Chargers play, kind of that 3-4, the way Brandon Staley wants to play defense. What about some big bodies that are in the middle that might be around first, second round that you would circle?
Yeah, that's a great point. You got to start with Jalen Carter at Georgia. A lot of scouts.
They won't sniff him.
Yeah, but it's worth noting that if he were in the draft last year, he probably would have been a first-round pick. But in terms of the Chargers, Brian Burris out of Clemson could also be there in 2021 range, but he's more, of an interior guy. And if you're looking for that, Mazi Smith out of Michigan is a guy that's high on our radar. Keno Benton from Wisconsin is another guy that I think will be early off the board. So, those are probably the top defensive tackles. If I'm the Chargers, I'm probably looking in the mid to late rounds there. A guy like Khalid Kancey out of Pittsburgh, maybe undersized. You can get him in the late rounds. Maybe outplays where he's selected with his draft position. Might be a guy that I would target in the late rounds.
Rick, I remember so vividly last year the praise that you heaped on Zion Johnson. And what do you know? The Chargers draft him. He has a really good rookie season. Your thoughts on how he played and his prospects in year 2 and beyond. And then just along that same line, you can never have enough offensive linemen for Justin Herbert. And, with Trey Pipkins being a free agent and some of the injuries that they had across the line this year, who are maybe some depth pieces that could be starters eventually for the Bolts?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a building block that they build around in the future. And I think the offensive line class as a whole is a great depth-wise, a position that the Chargers could kind of dig into here because tackle, center, again, two largely in-depth stacked positions. I look at a guy, Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. This guy, to me, I saw him at the Senior Bowl. He's a plug-and-play tackle. I think he can just step in immediately. Tyler Steen from Alabama was highly impressive. Some people like him as a tackle. Some people like him as a guard. You guys might be familiar with Rashawn Slater. Tyler Steen has that inside-outside versatility. I think he could be had in the second or third round. Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse. Now, here's a guy who's got a lot of hype, withheld his own, but he's kind of plateaued. So I feel like with Bergeron, you know what you're getting. He can compete for a starting job in year 1. I don't think he has the upside as some of the guys listed ahead of him, but he's a solid, dependable guy. And then Ryan Hayes from Michigan, you go back to Jim Harbaugh back in Stanford, he's always had well-coached offensive linemen, well-coached tight ends. Now Hayes, he lacks that bubble butt. The scouts want to see that bubble butt with your offensive lineman. When you got a flat butt, you lack that lower body strength, that ability to push. So I think Hayes slides a little bit about that, but he's got starter traits. One last guy, Carter Warren out of Pittsburgh. He's a guy that can play a lot of different positions, was injured. I think he's going to outplay his draft stock. And then I got to mention John Gaines from UCLA. Because we had great offensive line coaches at the NFLPA Bowl, Jackie Slater, Rich Seibert, a Super Bowl champion, our friend Lance Zeno, and they all ranted and raved about John Gaines. And the UCLA coaching staff, they talk about FBI, football intelligence. This kid is through the roof. He actually took reps at all 5 positions. Then he got called up to the East-West Shrine Bowl. Some people like him at center. Some people like him at guard. He's played at tackle. John Gaines is a guy, I think, he was probably an undrafted free agent coming into the All-Star circuit. I think he's a 4th or 5th round pick now.
Wow. Rick, just specifically, a name, every now and then a name will jump out, for the Chargers and their fans. Not saying inside baseball, but just casual observers. Last year it was Jameson Williams. We could not hear the name Jameson Williams enough when it came to Chargers.
We had 3 podcasts dedicated to Jameson Williams.
On that guy alone. But it seems like this year that name is Jalen Hyatt. And it's speed. The Chargers need speed. Where do you – I've seen him, outside the top 5 receivers. I've seen him, in the top 20. Where do you come out? Because he's going to run in the, 4.3s, low 4.3s maybe?
Yeah, I've seen him actually as high as the number 1 wide receiver coming off the board, right? And, for me, I'm a TCU fan of Quentin Johnson. I think he's the top guy. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Jordan Addison, I can understand being the number 1 wide receiver. When I watch Jalen Hyatt, it's an incredible film that he's laid down. But
it's a cartoon.
It is, and it's almost like a video game. But, here's the deal. NFL is fascinated with speed. It's something you can't teach. When I look at Jalen Hyatt, I see a one-trick pony. It's a damn good trick. But I just have a hard time struggling with sliding him into the first round equation when he's just winning on straight line speed. And I think NFL defensive coordinators are going to be able to figure that out. I don't have him in the first round mix. I understand the allure, I understand the luster, but it's just not my flavor of the week.
Running back is another topic that I feel like every single year we talk about here. Obviously, Austin Eckler, his play and his performance speaks for itself. Led the NFL in touchdowns again, but we're always talking about that bigger back to complement Austin Eckler. Is it worth a first-round pick? Is it somebody you get in the third or fourth round? I don't know if you could just walk us through some of the running back class and a guy that maybe could carry the load to be a nice complement to Austin potentially.
Yeah, I'm never a believer of drafting a running back in the first round. That's me personally. Yeah. I just see too many guys go in the mid, late, undrafted range and come in and make an impact. But Tyjae Spears, to me, at Tulane, he made himself a case. I think he's now in that second round equation after the week he had at Mobile. I mean, the change of direction, the burst, the vision, the explosion. He showed the ability to catch the ball down there, so I really like that. If you want a between the tackles thumper, though, Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. Yeah. I mean, this guy
keep him here.
Is a yak monster. He reminds me of James Conner, actually. And if you can get a Zach Charbonnet in the third or fourth round, if you're getting James Conner in the third or fourth round, hey, sign me up. Chase Brown out of Illinois, I think, is a guy. I saw him, his willingness. He was sticking his nose in there in pass protection at the Senior Bowl. I like that kind of party. Of course, he has the brother Sidney Brown. And I'm going to go way down, digging in the crates out here in Jersey, Monmouth, right down the shore, Jersey Shore, right down the road. This guy's a 4-down player, guys. He's the best short yardage runner in the entire NFL draft, and I like the kid out of Nevada too, Tua. But Monmouth, he's got the best short yardage ability. He runs, he passes, he catches, he blocks, he plays all 4 special teams units. He's not going to get drafted, but man, once you get that guy in the facility, just like Austin Eckler, you're not going to be able to cut him.
Who is he? What's his name?
We saw what.
Oh, well, Owen Wright out of Monmouth. Yeah,
Owen Wright. All right, cool.
Monmouth's Owen Wright. We look, Breece Hall was tracking to be the Rookie of the Year. I mean, he was playing incredible football, and I think you can tie a lot of the failures of the Jets, from their torrid start to their disappointing finish to him not being out there, and the way they wanted to run. So what I'm doing is setting up the case for a first-round back, right? Let's just say Bijan Robinson is sitting there at 21. I feel like people are really high on Bijan. Like, they really like this kid. Where, just in terms of the talent, forget about the philosophy, right? You put that guy on the field, what are we looking at?
Top 5 player in the draft, top 10 running back as a rookie. I mean, but at the end of the day, I look at guys, he is in the Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Adrian Peterson. If I date myself, I go back Darren McFadden, Reggie Bush. Yeah. He's in that equation.
He's that good.
He's that good. Now, what's the common denominator? All those guys I just mentioned. I don't recall any of them putting a team on their back and running them into the Super Bowl. So, and that's where I get back to, like, I just can't invest a first-round pick in a running back. But if I were to, I said it about Saquon Barkley, it would be Bijan Robinson. I mean, there's not much this guy can't do. And Rashawn Johnson, his backup is pretty damn good, too. He might wind up getting drafted as the backup to Bijan Robinson. Yeah. But no, he's an electrifying talent. There's not much he can't do. He's probably a top 5 overall player in the NFL draft. But, I mean, it's that devalued position, right?
But Rick, let's say this. Let's say you put Robinson on a Chargers offense with Justin Herbert as the quarterback and Austin Eckler as the other running back who could do everything, and Justin has these weapons, and you put a talent like Robinson who doesn't have to carry the offense. Justin Herbert's going to take care of that. What does that do for a Chargers offense in terms of explosiveness?
It's a luxury piece, right? It puts them over the top, maybe. And so the Chargers, when you look at their roster, they don't have a lot of weaknesses. And I think I remember the Falcons, they put together a hefty package, I think, to get Julio Jones during the draft. And that was kind of, at the time, a lot to give up. But it was kind of the piece they needed to get over the top. They winded up going into the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson is that kind of piece. So at 21, if you told me the Chargers were going to pull the trigger, I've got no qualms there. just not my philosophy belief. But hey,
You think someone will draft him high, Rick? You think do you think he goes in the top 10 or the top 15?
I think he goes in the top 20. But I will say this: there are exceptions to the rule. The Chargers might be that case because where are their needs? I don't know. You guys know better than I do, but in terms of roster construction, I look at them very similar to the Bengals. Like, there's not a lot of weaknesses there. So if you can afford to use a first-round pick on a luxury piece, if you feel like that's the missing link, I'm all for it.
So, and look, we love Nas. We had high hopes for Nas out of Delaware. It just, seeing the way his play time shifted toward the back end of the season and how he was spending more and more time off the field than on the field, and this is a decision year for Nas. Like, how about free safety and just that high safety? He plays a lot of too high. We know that's what Brandon Staley runs. But, we know he likes to have Derwin. Coach Staley likes to have Derwin all over the field. So what about that last line of defense, free safety? What do we have in this draft?
Yeah, Christopher Smith was a guy at the Senior Bowl, a little bit undersized there, but he can play in the box. He can step up and almost play that linebacker slot safety role. J.L. Skinner was a guy that had an outstanding week of practice out of Boise State. Now he's the complete opposite at 6'4", 200+ pounds. He's going to run probably in the sub 4.5 range. Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State, I feel like, is almost like a forgotten guy. And then the kid from Florida, Trey Dean, I can't recall I think he might have been at the East-West Shrine Bowl. But Trey Dean, this guy at one point was considered a first-round pick. He was lights out at the Shrine Bowl. He's played both safety positions. He can play freelance center field. He could play up in the box. So in terms of versatility and a chess piece, Trey Dean could play free. He could play strong. He could play linebacker. He could play slot. That would be a guy I would probably target in the 3rd or 4th round.
Rick, do you remember your evaluation of J.T. Woods? He was a guy the Chargers drafted in the 3rd round. Did not get a lot of run this year at all, but the hope is he can make a leap from his rookie year to his second season.
Yeah, we had a big buzz. In fact, we had him, I think, at the NFLPA Bowl, and our scouting staff was very high on him. Now, I lost tabs once he went to the pros. Maybe he was injured. I don't know what the case was. But, yeah, the skill set, the athleticism, it's all there. And I remember him coming out. There was a little bit of a buzz. So, not sure what happened this year, but I think he's a guy that can at the very least, make a name for himself on the special teams. And I think he would be a rotational defender, I would imagine. But, yeah, our scouting department was very high on him coming out. I think he made a bunch of plays on special teams in college as well.
Yeah, he it just seemed like for JT just struggled to diagnose, B, tackle.
Yeah.
Angles, really, really struggled in run support. Mm-hmm. I know people are, and look, there's a reason why people got excited about JT, right? He led the nation in interceptions. Guy had, 6 of them, I think, that last year. But what about, I feel bad just kind of asking you off the top of your head. What about those guys, like Alohi Gilman, who filled in for him admirably, real smart player, seems to make the right decision more often than not. Can you think of sort of secondary players that fall into that category? Like, hey, this guy's not going to run a 4.3, but, man, the intangibles are there, the smarts are there, maybe he was the defensive captain, something like that.
The one guy that comes to immediate thought is Riley Moss out of Iowa. And, like, scouts keep telling me he's a safety because he can't run. But, he's stuck. He was neck and neck with every receiver out there in the one-on-ones during Senior Bowl. So, there's a difference between time speed and game speed. And so I don't care if Riley Moss goes out to the combine or his pro day and runs a 4.54 and that's not sexy. He can stick you in the side pocket.
Right.
I'm keeping him at corner, and at the very least you have an instinctual ball hawk free safety type. But, man, Riley Moss is the guy that really stands out. Keidron Smith from Kentucky. And, by the way, I had a chance to meet his family. What a great, great family. But he was lights out, locked down at the NFLPA. Jim Nagy called us up, said, hey, we need a corner. Who do you got? Keidron Smith. He went down, lights out. And it's a shame because he's not invited to the NFL Scouting Combine. He was snubbed. But Keidron Smith's going to get drafted. He's got length. He's got size. Another one of those guys. He's almost 6'2", so some people think, oh, he's a safety. Not so fast, my friend. He's got some man-to-man coverage capabilities.
Hey, Rick, last thing for me, and it's a shame we're not going to be able to do this year. One of the things I loved doing with Money last year, the last 5 minutes of each podcast, Money broke down punters. And J.K. Scott was awesome this year for the Chargers. They don't need a punter. But just for Money, because I think this may be the only time that we're going to talk about punters, give me your top 3 or 4 punters, and I'll get you out of there.
Last year it was an anomaly year. Last year we had so many good punters. It was just a weird year.
Money was the Mel Kiper Jr. of punting. We had Stonehouse. We had all these dudes, and Money knew everything about every punter. It was incredible.
Riza and Hayes, and I mean, it was just a really weird year last year.
I'll tell you what, guys. This is my 21st year covering the draft. It's, I think, my 4th or 5th year working with the NFL PA Bowl. I've been to hundreds, if not thousands, of pro days. I've never seen a line of scouts waiting to speak to a punter like I did out in Pasadena with this Michigan kid, Roberts, I think he is. And our scout had him between 5.15 and 5.35 average hang time.
Jeez.
And he's a righty punter, but Nick Novak, our special teams coach, said, hey, check this out. He's got a lefty spin on it. I don't know how that's happening, but he had a punt in the game. The guy fumbled. They say a left-footed punter is responsible for 1 win a year because you're going to muff a punt. Anyway, Roberts out of Michigan. You got my guy Corsack out of Rutgers from Australia. He's got the boot.
Love
and
that.
then you got Turk from Arizona State. You might remember his father.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Matt Turk.
You got some pretty good punters here, and the Syracuse kid ain't bad. Eh? Syracuse has a knack for putting punters into the pros. They got another one in Smith.
Last thing, Rick, Bruce Feldman does the freak list, and every year we see these just physical freaks, specimens that for whatever reason they slide. Last year, Tariq Woolen, you think about, DK Metcalf sliding to the late second. Is there that guy that measurables just off the charts, but for some reason production wasn't there? It happens every year. Every single year, one of these physical freaks gets drafted in the 4th round and becomes like the sensation of the draft. And how did we pass on him? And this year, they're talking Tariq Woolen redraft, be a top 5 pick.
Thanks for that setup, Money. I mean, I got a good one for you.
Yeah.
Derek Parrish out of Houston. Okay, and I got my red on today, maybe just for him. He reminds me of Juszczyk, and this kid is a thumper. Okay, he got hurt, I think, after the 4th game, but he was playing pass rusher. He was playing defensive end linebacker. He had about 5 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss. He runs sub 4.5 at 250 pounds. He's got an 11-foot broad jump, a 40-inch vertical. I don't know about you guys. I like my fullbacks built that way. And I think this kid is going to be a weapon in the mold of Kyle Juszczyk. And I'll tell you what, he might not even get drafted, but he is going to make an impact at the NFL level. He is on the Bruce Feldman's freak list, and he made a name for himself. One of these all-star games, I think it was the Shrine Bowl, where he's coming out now as a fullback. So it's a tricky position, right? Because you've now eliminated yourself from half the teams in the NFL. Right. But man, this kid is the real deal. Derek Parrish out of Houston.
Love it.
Rick, it's always a highlight of the offseason talking to you, man. You said you were in Manhattan Beach recently. Next time you're in Manhattan Beach, you got to hit us up. But we'll get you out of here and just promoting what you have going on with everything at SI.
No, I appreciate that, guys. I mean, like I mentioned, our 21st year of coverage, we're fortunate enough to be the NFL draft content provider over on Sports Illustrated, so we're not hard to find. And, of course, we have the NFL Draft Bible publication coming out. You can find that at allaccessfootball.com. And, of course, you guys will certainly be receiving a VIP package.
Appreciate it. Rick, you're the best.
Appreciate you, Rick. We'll take a quick break, and Money and I will break down the Super Bowl on Sunday. All right, guys, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Surface, celebrating 10 years of partnership with the NFL. As the official laptop, tablet, and sideline technology provider for the LA Chargers, Microsoft Surface provided players and coaches with the tools to succeed both on and off the field every day. Learn more about Surface at surface.com. And if you've been dreaming of going to the Super Bowl, there's only one way to get official ticket packages. On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL, they offer exclusive access to 50-yard line seats, official pregame parties next to the stadium, post-game field access, and much more. Visit NFLOnLocation.com or search NFL On Location today. Your Super Bowl experience of a lifetime awaits, only with On Location. So, Money, kicking off our draft coverage with Rick Serritella. Rick's great. Always fun.
Love it. Draft season, it's hope springs eternal, right? When you don't win the Super Bowl this time of year, you start thinking about how you're going to win the Super Bowl and what positions you can fill through the draft. And look, we saw how important the draft was. What's the quote from Tom Telesco? He saved our season. Jamari Sawyer, 6th-round pick. He saved our season. Without him at left tackle after Rashawn Slater left in week 3, they are not in the playoffs. I know it did not end the way that we wanted it to end, the way the players, the coaches, the front office wanted it to end, the owners, the fans wanted it to end, but you don't have a 10-win season. You don't have a 27-0 lead in the first half. And obviously, look, Jamari got hurt in that game, and that cannot be overlooked. So I get why fans get so excited about the draft, about young players. Dean Leonard, and Jasir Taylor, helped with a win over Denver to get to that 10 number, and get the number 1 wild card spot. Like, it's an important deal. And obviously you already talked about Zion. So we know how important the draft is. I think it's a real interesting year for the Chargers. I know probably next week we'll get into it post Super Bowl. Just, what the roster is going to look like, what money looks like, extensions look like, and how you juggle this cap, because there's a number of different ways to do it, in terms of converting salary to signing bonus, trading players, cutting players, post-June 1st designations versus pre. All that stuff's going to come into play because they spent a lot of money last year to take a swing. They thought they had the roster, and God love them for doing it, and spending a couple $100 million in free agent contracts. And this year they're going to have to do that for Justin Herbert, and that's going to change the calculus dramatically. So, getting Rick on, and I'm sure we'll get our man DJ on, and there's a number of other folks that we can talk to, between now and the draft at the end of April that are going to certainly get the folks excited about 2023.
Yeah, it's a great point because the next couple of weeks we'll see what the roster looks like, and then free agency will dictate what they may do in the draft. So still a ways to go before we get to April, but never too early to talk about the NFL draft. Hey, this just popped in my head. Dude, you called one of the best college basketball games of the year in Indiana. What was that experience like?
That's incredible.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was at Assembly Hall in Bloomington, 216th meeting between the Hoosiers and Boilermakers. It's one of the great. I know everybody knows, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville, all those sort of things. But this is probably one of the most overlooked rivalries in college basketball because, look, in fairness, Purdue and Indiana have not made championship runs in the last 30 years. It's been a while since they found themselves in the Final Four. So they're two really, really good teams. Indiana was the preseason pick to win the Big Ten. They had some big injuries. Xavier Johnson, Race Thompson both went down, 2 of their veteran leaders. And they're getting healthy now. And so for those that don't follow college basketball, Zach Edey is just, one of the great, you got to watch Purdue basketball. He's 7'4". He's athletic. He's unstoppable. Like, teams just cannot stop him. And it's fun to watch. So, 22-1, their only loss coming at a buzzer beater by Rutgers, a 1-point loss. Otherwise, they'd have been perfect going into that game at Assembly Hall, and Indiana gets out with a win. They led by 15. Purdue cut it down to 2 with 3 minutes left, and then Hoosiers pulled away, and, fans rushed the court and all that sort of stuff. It was really cool to be in the building, be part of it, and lucky enough, I was assigned the rematch, so I'll be going back to Mackey in a couple weeks for the Indiana at Purdue rematch, the 217th meeting between the two teams. And by the way, just want to make sure I'm not left out. I got it right here. My Microsoft Surface goes with me. When I hit the road, I love this thing. I know we're sponsored by them and stuff, and it's great, but I would not sing its praises if I did not believe in it. I absolutely love it. It's my stat monitor. When we're on the road, they have a thing called Tabs that I use extensively, where I can pop back and forth between all my stats for the different teams when I want to dig something up. It's so easy to access with the search tools. It's just such an awesome piece of technology that really is, I mean, it's essential to everything I do during the Charger games. It's always in front of me. Love the way it's set up. And now with college basketball season happening, it goes everywhere I go.
You got a Chargers logo at Assembly Hall. They're like, okay,
I know.
That's the voice of the Chargers.
It's funny, and it's actually happened. When I pop it up, they look at it and they're like, "What's that all about?" And then they start talking to me like, "Oh, yeah, I know who you are." So it's kind of funny.
That's awesome. All right, Super Bowl. If you look at this game through Chargers glasses, right? Chiefs, Eagles. I go back to last year. Chargers go on the road, they beat the Chiefs. They go on the road, they beat the Eagles. Obviously played the Chiefs twice this year, lost by a field goal in both games. These were the two best teams in football money, the number one seed in each conference. Both had home field, both protected it. And we have quite the matchup, man. Both teams have been awesome this year. And I really don't know what to expect. I could see both teams winning this.
Yeah, I wish we had both quarterbacks at 100%. I think it's clear that both are hurting. You could see the way Patrick Mahomes moved in the championship game, that he was not right, clearly. And you can see the way that Jalen Hurts threw the ball in the conference championship, that he's not right. So, I think that's going to play a big role in the way the game plays out. Is Jalen Hurts' shoulder healed? Because, it just seemed like the accuracy was off, and it's been there all year. And same thing with Patrick Mahomes. To me, like, you look at it, and if games, are won on the lines, the Eagles have the advantage. They have the better offensive line. They have the better defensive line. If Patrick Mahomes is not right and he can't move, and you've got that front, I mean, you're talking about 70 sacks in the regular season, 5 players with double-digit sacks. And you see Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat. I mean, Hassan Reddick. It is crazy what they throw at you up front. So, like, to me, and look, like we said earlier, Chris Jones, you can make a compelling case he's Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, that's why the Chiefs won the conference championship, because of what Chris Jones was able to do to that front. Offensive line-wise, it's just my lot of what he's been able to do after just starting playing, from down under to coming here and just figuring out football, and how he's become a dominant force at one tackle, perhaps the best center in the league in Jason Kelce, certainly the leader of that line, Lane Johnson at right tackle, maybe the best right tackle in football. Like, that's just, to me, that's so much to overcome for the Chiefs. But Patrick Mahomes, I mean, that's, like, to me, that's why you pick the Chiefs. You're just like, I'm not picking against Patrick Mahomes. I'm just not going to do it.
So I think the key is going to be turnovers. Jalen Hurts only lost one game this year. It was to the Commanders, I believe, on a Monday night, and I think they had like 4 turnovers in that game. They've been so good at taking care of the ball. So if they take care of the football, I think the odds of the Eagles winning the game goes up. But what struck me funny was, I don't know if you saw Brandon Ayuk's comments about the Chiefs and the Eagles. He said that if he was a betting man, he goes, I'm not a betting man, but I would put everything that I own on the Chiefs to beat the Eagles. And I know that the Chiefs beat up the Niners pretty good earlier in the year, and I don't know if Brandon Ayuk has a little sour grapes because he didn't have a quarterback in the NFC Championship game, but that just kind of struck me because the Chiefs, you talk about all the depth and all those players that the Eagles have on both sides of the ball, but we talk about the impact players on the Chiefs, a guy like Chris Jones, Patrick Mahomes, obviously Travis Kelce. Those are the guys that win you games on the biggest stage. So that's what I think is fascinating. You have players in the league saying that, oh man, the Chiefs are going to beat the Eagles, no problem. Then you have all the evidence, what the Eagles have done this year and how good Jalen Hurts has played. That's why I'm kind of at a loss at this point.
Yeah, I think, look, I think there have been concerns on the secondary for the Eagles all season. Ayuk's a wide receiver, so yeah, I think there's some sour grapes there. Perhaps he's beaten his guy, and he's just there's nothing there. He can't get anything out to him because of the injuries. So I think there's a level of frustration there. You look at, I'm trying to find the numbers, but I don't remember the Eagles. Yeah, they only gave up 22 passing touchdowns. But I think, like, if I remember right, the Chiefs had a serious issue. Let me see. where is it? The Chiefs. No, see, the Chiefs were really, that's what it is. So the Chiefs were really good defensively against the run, only 10 rushing touchdowns allowed. So I think that's perhaps where it comes into play. San Francisco is what? A run-heavy team. Everything comes off those designed runs from Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. And when the Chiefs' run defense stymies you and it's very hard for you to get anything going, that's where I think maybe Ayuk is coming from. Like, oh, I saw this. Our run defense was really good. To me, I just think it comes down to quarterback health. If Patrick Mahomes is not right, I don't quite see how he's able to get out of those, to get away from that pass rush. And I think that impacts things dramatically. I think there's a reason why the line is 1.5. It's a pick'em contest. Do you believe in the lines? Do you believe in the quarterback? And, because Jalen's been banged up and his shoulder's not quite right, I think that's, where the potential MVP of these are the two guys that are going to finish 1 and 2 in the MVP race. Mahomes probably going to win it. And Jalen Hurts, because he missed those couple games, is probably going to finish second. Or I don't think it would surprise many people if he did win it, because it shows you what happens to that Eagles offense when he's not there. So if I had to pick, we've seen it. We see it too many times, Chris. It's like you have them dead to rights. And somehow, some way, and whether you want to say it's fair or not, you see the hold – in the game, that led to the conversion that set up the game-winning field goal, or that led to the run that led to the penalty that led to the game-winning field goal. It just seems like things break right for that team. They always do. And if it's a flag that's not thrown on a hold, if it's a player making a critical error, and I'm not saying it wasn't a penalty, it absolutely was a penalty on the sideline. But just those things just happen to the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. It's the craziest thing, but they do. So I think in a tight contest, I'd be apt. But see, then I say it, and I just think their offensive line stinks. I just do. I think they hold way too much. And you can't really
say it, Bunny. Like you don't want to say it, right?
No, I don't. I don't, because they beat the Chargers twice, and it hurts and it stings. But I see how much they hold and get away with it. And then I listen to freaking Mitchell Schwartz on podcasts saying things like, well, technically it's not a hold, because if you've engaged and you have your arm bar out, as long as you're moving your feet, it's not a hold. Shut up. I don't want to hear that. It's like he's got his arm around a guy's neck and he's impeding his forward progress. I don't care what his feet are doing at that point, And look, it's ridiculous for me to say that, versus a Pro Bowl offensive lineman, but the film's there. I mean, come on. It's and I see it when I go back and watch the Charger games, and Joey Bosa getting held on every single play, and Orlando Brown holding on every single play because his feet are slow. It's just, I think they're, you know what? I'll take the Eagles. I think they're going to struggle. I think because you've got it inside with Hargrave and Cox. You've got it outside with Reddick and Sweat and Graham. So I do think that defensive line is going to be able to do some serious damage. Yeah, whatever. I'll take the Eagles.
I'm taking the Eagles too. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Just the way that their offense is constructed. If they need to run the ball, they got the horses to run the ball. If they need to throw the ball, they got weapons up and down the field, led by Goddard and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts has been more accurate as a passer this year. I think that they can play a number of different ways. And, there's a ton of former Chargers in this game too, Money. You start on the Eagles side. You got Shane Steichen as the OC. You got Nick Sirianni, who obviously was the wide receivers coach. Kaiser White, Linval Joseph. You got Melvin Gordon and Cole Christensen on the practice squad of the Chiefs. So there's a lot of bolts in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think maybe that's also part of it. I like Shane and Nick so much. Got to know Shane quite well during his time here. Got to know Nick a little bit because he and Nick Hardwick, when he was here his first season, were super close. So I was able to get to know Nick. I actually saw both of them last year at the Combine. We ended up hanging out one night, out drinking and having a good time and just kind of catching up with them. And it was really cool to talk a little bit of football with Shane and just listen to how excited he was about the upcoming season, and that was before they traded for A.J. Brown, but just kind of chatting with him about how things were going. So maybe that's where my bias is creeping in, just really loving to see, would love to see those two guys, get a Super Bowl ring as much as I appreciated them when they were here with the Chargers, as much as I like them as people. And plus, don't know how you can't root for Jalen Hurts. Like, he is one of the easiest players to want to see do well. His work ethic, the way he handled his demotion at Alabama, not, missing a beat, transferring to Oklahoma, being in the Heisman conversation, not whining about slipping out of the first round and being a second-round pick despite his resume and what he was able to do in college. And, just could not be more excited for him as well. So maybe there's a little bit of a bias and a little bit of a fan interest there.
It's fine, though. Kaiser White was one of my favorite guys on the Chargers last year. Just a great dude off the field.
Great dude.
Obviously, he produced at a high level for the Chargers last year, produced at a high level for the Eagles this year, and it was kind of a homecoming for him to go back to Philly. He's from that area, went to West Virginia. So I'd like to see Kaiser get a ring because, he's had a heck of a year for the Eagles and deserves it. So we're both going with Philly, huh?
I say it and I hate it. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I know the Chiefs are gonna win.
We got a minute. Hey, you can amend. You can amend at any time over the next minute, Money.
Like I said, that's the only reason that. Like, I think when you look at it on paper, there's really only one reason to take there's two reasons to take the Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes will not lose. Can you really envision Mahomes going to 3 Super Bowls and only winning 1? Can you really, knowing how things just always break their way? Why would it not happen here? But, I look at what the Eagles, all the Eagles can do is play who's in front of them. And I don't, I hate the whole, look who they've played all season. Look, okay, Brock Purdy got knocked out. Josh Johnson's arm fell off. He had a concussion, Brock Purdy's arm got ripped off. Okay. But that's what happened in the game, So all they can do is play and dominate. And they absolutely dominated the Giants offense. Just that defense wrecked that Giants offense that a lot of people thought was going to be able to hang in that game. So, I'll stick with the Eagles. Absolutely. I'm ping-ponging
absolutely
here.
Right. No question.
Ping-ponging here.
No question. All right, I'm taking the Eagles. Money's taking the Eagles. We're going to get out of here before he changes his mind. Hey, Rick was the first guest of the offseason. We're going to keep getting guests on, talking draft, talking free agency. Yeah. So look forward to keeping this rolling on Thursdays. Thank you to Microsoft Surface. For Money, I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. All right, guys, thanks again for listening to Chargers Weekly. And if you've been dreaming of going to the Super Bowl, there's only one way to get official ticket packages. On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL. They offer exclusive access to 50-yard line seats, official pregame parties next to the stadium, postgame field access, and much more. Visit NFLOnLocation.com or search NFL On Location today. Your Super Bowl experience of a lifetime awaits, only with On Location.